Imagine waking up one morning to watch 7 people disappear in a streak of fire across a clear Texas sky, broadcast live in front of the entire world. No warning, no mayday call, no chance to say goodbye, just gone. And then the phone calls started, and the search parties, and the questions that would haunt NASA for years. How did this happen? How did the most advanced spacecraft ever built, the crown jewel of human engineering, turn into debris scattered across 2 states? This is the story of Columbia, the shuttle that started it all, the one that carried the dreams of an entire civilization into orbit and paid the price for our ambition. To understand Columbia, you have to understand what she was born into. The 1970s were a strange, restless time for NASA. The moon landings were over. The applause had faded, and the question hanging over every congressional hearing, every budget meeting, every press conference was the same. What now? The Apollo program had cost a staggering amount of money, and the rockets, those magnificent Saturn V's, they were designed to be used once and thrown away, like a match. Strike it, use it, discard it. NASA knew this couldn't go on. If humanity was ever going to make space routine, not just a one-time stunt, but a repeating, sustainable endeavor, the entire model had to change. So they dreamed up something radical. A spacecraft that could launch like a rocket, orbit like a spaceship, and land like an airplane. A vehicle you could fly, refuel, and fly again, dozens of times, maybe hundreds. They called it the Space Shuttle. 5 orbiters would eventually carry that name: Challenger, Discovery, Atlantis, Endeavour. Each one remarkable, each one a monument to what humans are capable of when they refuse to believe in limits. The first was Columbia, and Columbia was different. She was built in Palmdale, California, in a factory that hummed with ambition and nervous energy. The engineers who worked on her, many of them young, some of them barely out of school, knew they were building something that had never existed before, not even close. The shuttle wasn't just a vehicle, it was 5 machines in one. There was the orbiter, the part that looked like an airplane that would carry the crew into the heavens and bring them home. There was the massive external tank, the largest structure in the whole system, orange as rust and filled with 500,000 gallons of liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. And there were the solid rocket boosters, 2 massive columns of controlled explosion that would burn for 2 minutes and push the whole stack off the ground. Columbia herself weighed nearly 80 tons. Empty. She was the heaviest orbiter ever built because she was the first. The thermal protection system alone, those iconic black and white tiles that coated her skin, required entirely new manufacturing techniques. Each tile was unique, hand-placed. There were over 20,000 of them, and every single one mattered. Because when a spacecraft re-enters Earth's atmosphere, it hits a wall of superheated air so intense, temperatures reaching over 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, that without protection, the aluminum beneath would vaporize in seconds. The tiles were Columbia's skin, her armor, her last line of defense between the crew and oblivion. Nobody knew it yet, but that detail, those tiles, would define her legacy forever. April 12, 1981. The date wasn't chosen by accident. It was exactly 20 years to the day after Yuri Gagarin had become the first human in space. A deliberate choice. At Kennedy Space Center, beneath a Florida sky, still dark at 3 in the morning, Columbia sat on Launch Pad 39A and waited. 2 astronauts were strapped into her cockpit. Commander John Young, a legend, a man who had already walked on the moon, and pilot Robert Crippen, who had spent years preparing for a mission he'd been told would probably never fly. This was STS-1, Space Transportation System, Mission 1. And here is the thing that should make your stomach drop. No one had ever flown the shuttle before, not once, not unmanned, not in a simulation that actually left the ground. The very first time the space shuttle flew with human beings aboard was the very first time it flew. John Young, when asked about this, reportedly shrugged and said something to the effect of, That's the most dangerous test flight ever. I know it, and I'm doing it anyway. That morning, hundreds of thousands of people gathered along the Florida coastline. They brought lawn chairs and cameras and binoculars and blankets. They weren't sure what they were about to see, but they knew it was going to be something. At 7 a.m., the countdown reached 0. The engines ignited, the ground shook, the air shook. The water in the drainage ditches rippled outward in perfect circles from the sheer force of what was happening. And Columbia rose, slowly at first, almost reluctantly, as if the Earth herself was trying to hold on. And then faster and faster, the solid rockets burning so bright that people 30 miles away reached for their sunglasses. 2.5 minutes after liftoff, the boosters separated. Columbia was alone. 6 minutes later, she reached orbit. John Young, looking out the window at the planet turning slowly below him, said, "We're in orbit." 2 words. That was it. 2 words that changed everything. For the next 22 years, Columbia flew. She carried science experiments that couldn't be done on Earth, where gravity pulls everything downward and ruins the results. In microgravity, scientists could grow protein crystals of perfect purity. They could study how fire burns differently when there's no convection. They could watch what happens to the human body when it's freed from the relentless pull of a planet. Columbia carried the Chandra X-ray Observatory into orbit in 1999, a telescope that would go on to reveal some of the most stunning images of the cosmos ever captured. Black holes, supernova remnants, the remnants of the Big Bang itself. She carried scientists alongside astronauts, not just test pilots and military officers, but professors, researchers, doctors, people who had spent their entire careers waiting for a chance to work in space and who came home transformed by the experience. There was a mission in 1983, STS-9, where 6 people flew together for the first time in American spaceflight. 6 human beings hurtling around the planet at 17,000 miles per hour, conducting experiments in a pressurized lab module in Columbia's payload bay. And they all came home, mission after mission, year after year. Columbia became something beyond a machine. She became a symbol of persistence, of possibility, of what a civilization can accomplish when its scientists and engineers and pilots and politicians and taxpayers all decide together that some things are worth the risk. But here's what was happening beneath the surface, in the meetings and memos that the public never saw. Risk was always part of the equation. Everyone at NASA knew this. They said it out loud. They wrote it into training manuals. They held ceremonies to honor the astronauts of Apollo 1 who died in a launchpad fire in 1967 before they ever left the ground. But knowing that risk exists and truly reckoning with it are 2 very different things. By the 1980s, the shuttle program was under pressure, political pressure, budget pressure, schedule pressure. There were manifests jammed with missions. There were stakeholders demanding results. There was a culture, subtle, unspoken, but real, that said launching on time mattered. That delays were embarrassing, that the shuttle was supposed to be routine. Routine, that word would haunt them, because routine is what makes you stop being afraid of the thing you should still be afraid of. In January 1986, Challenger was destroyed 73 seconds after liftoff. The cause was an O-ring in one of the solid rocket boosters, a rubber seal that had been flagged as a concern by engineers the night before the launch. They were overruled. The launch went forward in below freezing temperatures, and 7 people died. NASA grounded the shuttle for nearly 3 years. They rebuilt procedures. They reformed their safety culture. They promised themselves that it would never happen again. And then, slowly, the pressure crept back. By 2003, Columbia was flying her 28th mission, STS-107, a science mission. 16 days of experiments in orbit. What nobody knew, what was visible on the camera footage but somehow not flagged as critical in the post-launch review, was this. 82 seconds after Columbia lifted off on January 16, 2003, a piece of foam insulation broke off from the external tank. It was roughly the size of a briefcase, and it struck Columbia's left wing at over 500 miles per hour. The engineers who raised concerns were told, even if there's damage, there's nothing we can do about it in orbit. and so the analysis was set aside. Columbia continued her mission. The crew, Commander Rick Husband, pilot Willie McCool, and mission specialists Michael Anderson, Kalpana Chawla, David Brown, Laurel Clark, and Ilan Ramon, worked their experiments, filmed video diaries, spoke to their families on the radio. Kalpana Chawla, who had grown up in a small city in India, dreaming of the stars, had already been to space once before. She told interviewers she felt most herself when she was looking out the window at Earth. Ilan Ramon was the first Israeli astronaut. He carried with him a miniature Torah scroll that had survived the Holocaust. He carried a drawing made by a 14-year-old Jewish boy in a Nazi concentration camp. A drawing of the moon from the surface of the moon, a dream the boy never lived to see fulfilled. These were the people on board. These were the people coming home. February 1st, 2003, a Saturday morning, the kind of cool, clear winter day that makes Texas skies look infinite. Columbia hit the upper atmosphere at Mach 18. That's 18 times the speed of sound. At that velocity, re-entry doesn't feel gentle. It's a controlled collision with the air itself, a sustained impact that lasts 20 minutes and generates a plasma sheath so hot that the shuttle is temporarily surrounded by ionized gas that blocks all radio communication. This was normal. This happened on every re-entry. Mission Control in Houston knew they would lose contact for a few minutes, and then Columbia would reappear on their screens, descending toward Kennedy Space Center in Florida. But the few minutes came and went, and Columbia didn't reappear. Mission controllers watched their screens, waited, refreshed their data, looked at each other. 7 seconds of telemetry had arrived from the left wing sensors before contact was lost. 7 seconds showing temperature spikes, pressure anomalies, the quiet scream of a structure coming apart. People in Texas and Louisiana were already calling 911. They had seen streaks of fire in the sky, multiple streaks moving in formation. They didn't know what it was, but they knew it wasn't right. Mission Control knew. Flight Director Leroy Kane had tears in his eyes when he gave the order to lock the doors and preserve the data. Columbia was gone. All 7 crew members were lost. Their remains and the wreckage of the shuttle they had trusted with their lives were scattered across nearly 40,000 square kilometers of Texas and Louisiana. In the days and weeks that followed, more than 25,000 people participated in the search and recovery operation. Volunteers, debris teams, rangers, residents, all of them walking fields and forests, picking up pieces of a machine that had once flown among the stars. They found fragments of the thermal protection tiles, components of scientific experiments that had somehow survived. And they found the remains of the crew and returned them home with full honors. The investigation took months. The conclusion was devastating in its simplicity. The foam strike had punched a hole in the leading edge of Columbia's left wing. Not huge, a wound that was invisible from the outside, but during re-entry, superheated plasma forced its way through that breach and ate through the wing's interior structure from the inside out. Columbia didn't explode, she came apart, gradually, trying in some mechanical sense to hold herself together for as long as she could. The Columbia Accident Investigation Board didn't just blame the foam, they blamed the culture, the organizational pressures, the willingness to accept risk that had never been truly accepted, only papered over, deferred, and quietly normalized. They called it the same lesson that had gone unlearned since Challenger. NASA flew the remaining shuttles for 8 more years. They retired the fleet in 2011. Discovery, Atlantis, and Endeavour now stand in museums where school children press their faces to the glass and wonder what it felt like to ride them. Columbia's name is engraved on the Space Mirror Memorial at Kennedy Space Center, alongside the names of Challenger's crew and the astronauts of Apollo 1. And on the surface of Mars, there is a place called the Columbia Hills, a range of low peaks that NASA's Spirit rover was guided toward in 2004, less than 2 years after the accident. The individual hills are named for each of the 7 crew members who were lost: Husband Hill, McCool Hill, Anderson Hill, Chawla Hill, Brown Hill, Clark Hill, Ramon Hill. 7 summits on another world, standing in the silence of a planet nobody has yet walked on, bearing the names of 7 people who believed with everything they had that the universe was worth the reaching for. That is Columbia's legacy. Not the accident, not the failure, but the fact that she flew, that she carried people who chose risk over safety because they understood something most of us forget, that the greatest human achievements have always lived on the other side of
10,
fear.
9, 8, go for main engine start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0, and liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis, reaching the crest of its historic achievements in space.
And Houston, Atlantis is in the roll. Roger, roll, Atlantis.
Houston is now controlling. The roll maneuver is complete. Atlantis is in a heads-down position on course for a 51.6 degree, 136 by 36 statute mile orbit.